Oh my god. Oh, that camera's abysmal. I don't even have the stream audio in this scene. Microwave audio capture, desktop audio. Hey chat, my friends. Welcome. We are live and alive. We have one live viewer today. Today is Sunday, December 14th. It is 9:30 p.m. We are right on schedule. Looks like we're in for some time today. Today we're looking at Taoism tea and Korea mainly only because it's trending, and that's gonna give a lot of a little bit of a boost in the algorithm for clips, right? Because they need to build an audience. I'll be transparent about it. That's my entire intention, and that's what I tell everybody. That music's a bit loud. Alright. I'll crank this up a bit too, so that I'm able to be heard. Ah! I spilled my tea. I overfilled. I will be drinking this throughout the course of today, because today we will also be talking about tea. Okay, sorry. Oh, how I love tea! Tea, my beloved. This is green tea. I am Kenyan, represent, and we are the largest tea producer in all of Africa, so we're goated on that front. I just think we gotta nationalize our country, our country's economic, like agricultural industries. I think that alone would cover the entire cost of living for a lot of the basic necessities for people in Kenya, but they just don't do that. And I say that as an anarchist because I understand the fact of the matter that there are ways for people to get the things that they need that don't exactly align with my worldview. And that's just gonna happen to be the case. That also continues to be the case for China and the Chinese government. I can't drink this. I didn't pull it up to say the tea and the cup were Chinese, by the way. That looks silly. I'll be reading the Tao Te Ching. I might read some Mao. I might read some fuck it, let's read some Xi Jinping later. Why not? You know what I mean? We're gonna keep it Chinese themed because there is a Chinese air in this atmosphere, and I want to keep that spirit alive for the coming Chinese century. We are all, and I love tea. Tea comes from China, and it is special to me. So that's the agenda for today. Top of the hour. Not seeing too much activity. All the vitals look good. My CPU usage is 5%. Oh my god. My computer is goated. I have to start actually doing some stuff though. Can we go? Hey, welcome. The Tao Te Ching. A book that is familiar to many, not familiar to many others, right? What's more popular definitely is the fucking the Art of War, right? Isn't that what everyone's all about? That one is, and there has been like a little bit of pushback lately. I've seen people talking about some, like, there's the Tao Te Ching, just feed your troops. It's funny. The Tao Te Ching, in terms of feeding your troops and like what it says on that and whatever, everyone. Tao Te Ching, what am I talking about? The art of war. The art of war and whatever it says about like the tactics and whatever, no matter how easy they are, you have to remember they are fundamental, right? People are, if not inherently selfish, right? I don't believe that. People aren't inherently selfish, but they have an inherent tendency to understand the self first. It's not a self-preservation first. It's not a me first. It's a my world is what exists first, right? I think that's what people usually mean. The fact that people's point of views and perspectives are limited, and in that they will make mistakes. Because that's human nature. But that also allows for the fact that human nature, if it's not like greed at that point and is like the fact that we have limited perspectives, our strength is in the fact that we are able to commune with each other, right? Is that not the rebuttal to that? Anywho, reading the Tao Te Ching, the Tao can be rotten. Oh, the Tao that can be rotten is not the enduring and unchanging Tao. The name that can be named is not the enduring and unchanging name, right? What is the Tao, right? General concept of the Tao, would be the way. I think that's how it's translated generally, scholarly and all that. It's the natural way in which the world chooses to work, continues to work. It's like a certain logic. It's like the logos almost. If any of you are familiar with that, it's a will that doesn't necessarily have an intention. And you can't necessarily override it because it exists beyond all of us, right? And this will is incredibly complex. So complex, it like would break any person's mind because again, we have limited perspectives. And that is humanity's fatal flaw, is its limited perspective. It's a limited perspective that we choose to have. And the name that can be named is not the enduring name and the unchanging name, right? What is the process of naming? What is naming? Naming is giving status to a shape that was once formless, right? Whenever you say there's like one tie hanging on my door right now, then that tie that is hanging on my door right now exists because it exists for the purpose of being a tie for my neck. Those particles that are there that exist in that shape are just stuff. It's just stuff. It doesn't necessarily have a purpose. Once we give it a name, once we give it a value, once we rationalize it, once we categorize it, that's when it stops being the Tao and stops being that which can be unnamed, that which cannot be named. Does that make sense? The conceive of having no name, it is the originator of heaven and earth. Conceiving of as having a name, it is the mother of all things. If you think about it as not having a name, right? Then it's the ground of all being. It is the you have to understand it as like the grooves that were in line in nothing before something started falling through, and then everything came all the way. It is the originator of heaven and earth in that way, right? Because all patterns follow this one larger pattern. If you think of it as having a name, like if you call it a name, it is the mother of all things. Now it has intention, passion, or not like intention, but like you can call it God now. Now it has crossed that boundary. We have without desire, we must be found. If it is deep mystery, we must. I can't read. Always without desire, we must be found. If it's deep mystery, we would sound. But if desire within us be, its outer fringe is that which we shall see. That's really interesting. The prose have a like this feels like I don't know, that like the end rhymes seem very boring. Who is his translator? What is he up to? What is he trying to do? I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily the greatest translation of that, but I can't be unsure of that either. That's just an intuition that I have about that on due to the flow of not only intention, like it's really hard to mix the describing someone's intent and describing the way that it felt in the original language, right? That's why there are different like Bible translations and stuff. I feel like we're not Chinese enough. Not yet. I have a friend who said he'd be cool to hop on the stream later when we talk about Korea, because he is in fact Korean and Black American. He's my goat, Jamil. Go ahead and let him know I'm live. Let's see if you can find I want to see if I can find something that'll read this out loud for me. Voila. Oh my god. I forgot that's a thing you can do. This goddamn AI slap. That's hella Hassan. Light gloves. It's called gloving, isn't it? That's the interesting one. Mini Somalia. Okay. I just gotta make sure this isn't anything that can get me like crazy canceled on here. This one might, I think. What was I looking for? Right. Taoism. What is Taoism? Explained by a Taoist master. 8 years ago. Oh wow. They already have it explained. Let's just read.
There's nothing you can do about it. That's the worst feeling in the world. essence of the way, or the book of the way and of how it manifests itself in the world, or simply the book of the way. Since it is already well known by its Chinese title, I have let that stand. About Lao Tzu, its author, there's practically nothing to be said. He may have been an older contemporary of Confucius, 551 to 479 BCE.
Whose translation is
and may have held
this? I don't care about the introduction.
My little miracle is Beckett. Do you agree? A month after his 3rd birthday, he got diagnosed with ATR.
Full audiobook for deep meditation and deep
The Tao Te King,
Eastern philosophy
by Lao Tzu.
Lao Tzu.
Narrated
Lao Tzu.
by Matthew Schmitz.
Thanks, Nat. Thanks, Matt.
Chapter 1. The Tao that can be spoken of is not the eternal Tao.
It's not
the
real.
Name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The name is the mother of the 10,000 things. Send your desires away, and you will see the mystery. Be filled with desire, and you will see only the manifestation. As these two come forth, they differ in name, yet at their source they are the same. This source is called a mystery. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all mystery. Chapter 2.
Okay. Actually, no. We're gonna copy and paste this. We're gonna go back to freeform because I felt that was very useful in terms of concept descriptions. This is the very first paragraph of the Tao Te Ching. Well, let me change that font. That font size is massive. Hold on. Here we go. The Tao that can be trodden is not the enduring and eternal Tao, right? You can have the yin and yang symbol and whatnot, but there, I feel like the easiest way to kind of like picture that almost is a black hole. You could have an image of that. I don't know if I want to though. I feel like I'll put up a copyrighted image that isn't necessarily and then like years down the line I'll like, we're living in a techno-fascist autocratic government and I lose my entire license because of that. And they make us get licenses for doing this stuff. It's not impossible. The name that can be named is not the enduring and unchanging name. Okay. If you want to understand it, you have to look past the metaphor. This is the concept with philosophy generally. A lot of philosophy, especially consciousness philosophy, especially ancient philosophy, and especially mystic philosophy. A lot of this tradition is on the tradition of not talking out of your ass, but sounding like you don't know what the fuck you're talking about and you're fucking insane and you're crazy. Is going out and about and saying, like having words be spoken and the exact opposite thing being heard or something differently, because what we're pointing to is the entirety of the earth. No matter where we point, we're pointing at it. And so what you're going to hear, if it's going to be what the other person's going to hear, if it's a smaller part of it, isn't going to be the whole earth, because you're trying to point at the whole earth from friggin' a human vantage point. Where do you point? Which is crazy, because if the Taoist consciousness is awareness, and and consciousness is supposedly a point in the brain, or like a thing in the brain, right? Why are we not able to find it and point at it in terms of like that, right? Why can't we do that? If how is it so large? How is it a point in the brain, yet it's so large that like we're in it and in the context of it? Always without desire, right? It has no will. It doesn't intend to do anything. It just kind of sits there and it does its own thing, and it does all of the things, and it does them in a beautiful, intricate pattern where they all connect and are all interwoven and connect to each other, and where every part of itself is touching itself in different ways. And some parts of itself don't recognize other parts of itself, even if they are in fact connected in ways that are invisible. If desired will always be within us. If desired will always be within us. If you're looking to understand what it is that you are, it's right there. You know what you are, right? And in that, you are a part of the Tao. You are a part of the way. You are a part of this order of the universe that has a certain flow. If you want to know what it is, just ask. Just ask. Ask yourself. Ask like a person who's like been following like the flow. I don't know. How do you want me to say it, right? It's just like, go with the flow, man. And see how that takes you. Because reality is, right, our collective will, us as a human species, us collectively moving towards a way, right, have a different will than the entire world, right? Us as a human collective have a will that is intended and fractured, right? Have a will that is intended in certain directions, right? But because we know that it's in multiple directions, right, we can't necessarily be sure, right, that it's going alongside the way that the universe is, right? That's what the conversation is about religion or whatever, right? And understanding Taoism, understanding that it's going to happen, and people are going to argue about what this truth is, what this way is, what is this way? Where do we go, right? And then you realize when you were all going different directions, some were more harmful than others, but all of them were the way. And in that context is the context in which we have to say, we can go one way or the other. I choose to go leftward, but you have to understand that all of these are true. Contradiction is the unification of opposites. It's what happens when opposites meet and their conflicts haven't resolved. Under these two aspects, it is really the same, but as development takes place, the different names together, we can call them the mystery. The mystery is the deepest gate, all that is subtle and wonderful. Okay. There are two main aspects that it's kind of conceiving of and giving right here. It is unchanging and enduring, right? That is one aspect, right? It has no name. It is the originator of all of reality. It is the ground of being. It is hidden, right? Having a name, what we have named, is the mother of all things, right? Is the caretakers, the nurturer, right? It fills in that archetype, right? And without desire must be found. If you don't see these two things at the back end of reality, nothing's going to make sense because you don't have the right context. What am I? Going in circle. It's cyclical. That's what these things are. They're cyclical. In fact, no. Ugh. That's what happened right now. I just spiraled internally. So we are going to bring it back. We're gonna react to some news. What's going on with China in the news? Macron threatens overseas tariffs with Trump. U.S. bombers join Japanese jets in snow force after Russia. Russia-China drills, Tokyo says. The Pearl of China high-end car sales. Oh my god, the high-end cars! The Chinese cars! Oh my god, the $13,000 friggin' the $8,000 high-end friggin' luxury cheap ass. Oh my god, I need one of these. I need one of these alongside my e-bike. What is this? The sales had sunk in China as its economy slows, taking a toll on European automakers. Huh. Oh my god. Poor Chinese netizens not being able to get their cars. Luckily they have public transit to be able to account for their inability to pay for cars at the moment. That's the thing I was saying at the beginning. China is able to use their their government structure to be able to help their people, and in that they have this like network of like systems in place and whatnot in which people can be caught if it happens that bad things happen. That's similar to something I had said. Let's actually read this article. Well, no, I don't really care about this article. Trump says he will allow Nvidia to sell 200-ton chips to China for a 25% cut. Awesome. I think W China then. W swindle. They got lowbrow. I don't care. They can get all this stuff. I'm probably gonna move there myself when I'm old. A little bit more put together. Pakistani Foreign Minister. China's retail sales grow sharply. Misses an estimate in November, deepening consumer worries. Wait, worry. China's sales in growth and industrial productions missed estimates in November as well in clean. Oh no. Oh no. What's up with China's economy? What's going on there? These are also China's sales of consumer goods went up by 4% year on in the first 11 months of 2025, totaling about 45.61 trillion yuan during the period of the National Bureau of Statistics on Monday. 4%. W. In November, recent sales increased by 1.3% year on year. The value added industrial output, a key academic indicator, increased 4.8 year on in November, the NBS said. The first 11 months of this year, China's industrial output has increased by 6% as compared to the period of last year. They're doing a lot. They chug like crazy. China's a friggin' I don't know, powerhouse. And that's one of the reasons that they've definitely come to the position that they are in, where they're able to swoop in to the to take the spot in the global hegemony, and they do that, and China has done that and will choose to continue to do that in spite of the fact that some people will say that's a bad thing, because turns out people like being able to afford life. That's what I was saying at the beginning. You can have disagreements and still understand and take the fact that this is a good thing. My disagreements with the Chinese government structure is that China is doing is contributing to genocide in the Congo, being one of the deepest miners in the Congo. But other than that, I think China is some of the greatest forms of like actual praxis that we have on this goddamn planet, in terms of in this goddamn class consciousnessless planet. We have no awareness of our class position, no awareness of our conscious position. We don't have a Christ conscious. well, let's like, no, let's not say Christ conscious, because then people are gonna think that's just like Christian and stuff. I mean, like, we don't have a consciousness conscious. I don't know, how do you say that? Everybody's sleeping in illusion, but not everybody. Not everybody. In China, the survey of urban employment stood at unemployment. Urban unemployment stood at 5.1% in November. Fixed assets went down 1.26 per year in the first 11 months. Fixed assets are goods. No? Fixed investment assets. No. Well, they're goods, obviously, but are they like regular goods? For a produce company, owned delivery trucks are fixed assets. Oh, this is like capital that you own. Like capital that you like specifically own, not capital that's necessarily I don't want to say shared, right? But like, let's say it's a leased, let's say is bought and sold, is variable in terms of maybe use, perhaps. I don't know. I'm fixated on this concept of fixed asset investment because I'm kind of just latching on to this specific idea, this specific idea, this specific idea. Home prices in China, 70 large, medium-sized cities generally fell in November in the previous months, data showed. If this is the China Daily, and this is China's economic post-steady growth in November, this makes sense. This checks out. At least from what I understand, right? If I'm not wrong, right? In a year where the urban unemployment rate stood at 1.5% in China, if you're doing good and you kind of can't like and you're making like a decent enough amount to be able to live and to say that you have like healthcare, right, and you have like roads and things, and you have like utilities paid for by like municipal governments or whatever. If you have a state that owns the means of production and gives it to you in that way, some people are going to choose to not want to work in that environment. That's okay. That's okay. It is okay that some people aren't going to work. Not every single person in the entire system of society needs to work in order for society to be functional. Their industrial output has increased in the same period. Their retail sales have increased in the same period, right? I guess investments have gone down. I don't know what these that just makes just like utilities cheaper. So that's actually another W, right? China's really up. This is the type of stuff we need in the US. This is the type of stuff they're taking from you. This is because they have a socialist ownership of the means of production, and we can achieve that with either a central unified socialist government that works for the people, right, or whatever, or we could achieve that with solving the meaning crisis with understanding that we are unified under the concept that we are all conscious agents, and we are therefore given the responsibility to work for the betterment of all conscious agents, because at the end of the day, a conscious suffering is your suffering. At the end of the day, all awareness is one unified awareness that will and has come to reveal itself in time. Let's see. China's retail growth okay. Sharply missed estimates in November. Deepening worry. Okay. I guess retail sales rose, missing their, okay, so that's what they were aiming for. That's why that was a bad thing. And slowing from the 2.9 rise in the prior month. I see. We're missing informations. So then there's context that we're missing for this story. Let's see. Missing expectations, investing.com. Okay. Written by this person. Let's check the author. Let's change this royalty free background music.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Diane. Hi, I just received my new Discover card. It says cash back on every purchase. What's cash back? It's new. Buy what you need, earn a little extra back. Even on walkie-talkies.
Oh, yeah. Temporarily down for maintenance. Okay, interesting. Then I will copy that name down and I will look her up myself. Wait. Oh, I didn't read the name. I thought that like ended in an A. And usually I'm right. Usually that would be the case. Ayushman, Oja. What is this song? Oh my god. That's so... Yo. Okay. I'm trying to check out this music. This shit is boring. It's so lame, the stuff they have here. The little things. Yeah. I think video game music might be the way to go. we go. Thomas Robert Thompson. I mean, he does a good bit of writing. Should be. I don't see why there would be any real issue. It's probably not the same guy. We'll see where they get there. Investing.com, Chinese industrial production grows less than expected in November, while retail sales are disappointing, underscoring uneven momentum in the world's second largest economy amid policy report measures. Industrial production grew 4% year-on-year in November, government data showed on Monday. The print was weaker than expectations of 0.5% and slowed sharply from risen in Chinese industrial production year over year. Yeah, I also need to figure out, oh my god, paywall, awesome. I need to figure out what America's economic, industrial output growth numbers are. What are America's industrial growth output numbers? Let's say November 2025. All right. Total index in terms of year, September 2025. 2025, September. Okay. Well, we can't really compare. Percent changes. Here we go. Major market groups, financial producers, dropped by 2%. Consumer goods dropped by 6%. Oh my god. We smashed that record. Consumer, Jesus. Retail sales. Construction was up 3%, materials 4%. Nice. Glad to see there was at least that. At least that this month we could see. There was negative 0.9 in terms of construction this July. Wow. Oh my god, they were really roughing it out down there. Oh Jesus. Okay, so well, these aren't even like point percentages, these are point percentages, right? In terms of actually, this is like the difference from last year. Actually no. This is on month. What was the other one saying that it was 0.0 percent? Was it saying the percent as a number or the percent as a zero as a dot thing? Oh my god. That's a month by month thing? Well, I guess we're looking at different statistics, I think. I need to pay attention in statistics. Total industry. These numbers aren't amazing though. Like, our economy is flat. If not flat, it's like a little bit downwards. China's moving by a lot, and like month by, is it month by month is the trajectory? Because I can't tell if it's what it's saying. Is it saying that it's like following a path of going up and up at a rate of 5% as at a slope of 5? Or is it saying it's changing by intervals of 5, like in terms of height? I don't know what it's saying there. But generally, I don't kind of care. We move a lot through these default mode network. We're just talking about that. We can get back to the Delta chain. We'll move on to T soon. Look at Chinese tea at least. Live on Twitch doing China stuff. Gotta let my gang know that so that gang can hop on. Speaking of, time for some tea. It's a whole bunch of green tea. How green tea is...
This is where some of the world's finest green tea begins. On steep hillsides, farmers move quickly to pick the freshest, most delicate tea buds. These days, some use handheld machines to make the job faster without harming the leaves. During harvest season, they carry baskets of freshly picked leaves to market at sunrise. These early season leaves are the most valuable, making it the best time of year for farmers to earn big. Right after picking, the leaves go through a key step called
I've never
killing
seen
the
that.
green.
That tool they use here.
Without
This
harming the
tool
leaves.
here.
During harvest season,
For
they carry
leaves?
baskets of freshly picked leaves to
I had
market
no.
at sunrise.
Usually,
These early season leaves are the
whenever
most
my
valuable,
my
making
family
it the best time of year for farm.
makes tea leaves and picks tea leaves, because we're tea farmers back in Kenya, so that's why we have a lot of tea, because we get it straight from our tea farm, and they're I don't know, we pick it by hand. Is it serious?
Right after picking, the leaves go through a key step called killing the green. High heat is applied to
or
stop
maybe I'm just
and lock
wrong.
in
Maybe I
flavor.
just haven't been
Without
back in
this
a
step,
while.
the leaves would keep
Or at least like
oxidizing and
that's
turn
the
into
way they
black
taught
tea.
me how to do it.
Some farmers still stir-fry the leaves by hand with traditional brooms,
Stir
but
fry
modern
with heat.
machines with
I also
automated
don't know how
arms now
it's
speed up the
done
process
as well.
while keeping the quality just as high.
Like in
And that's
terms
how
of
fresh green tea is made, step by step. This is where some of the world's finest green tea begins.
I don't know a lot about like the process of how like tea works scientifically, but my dad does. My dad was a tea like he was a manager at like at one of these like companies for tea. It was cool for him. So we just gotta kind of learn. These is
Hello, welcome to
different types of tea. There are different types of tea.
Is it just green or black? In
Matcha
China,
is just like tea leaves. It's just like brown tea leaves. Like, I swear he tastes like dirt because it just tastes like tea. Tea. It's good though. It's good. If you prepare it right.
tea is classified into 6 main types according to the process, which are green tea, yellow tea, white tea, oolong tea, black tea, and dark tea. It has no direct relationship with the tea tree variety. The classification of Chinese tea mainly depends on the level of fermentation and the processing methods. Not every tea leaves works for all 6 types. Some leaves, not every, and the processing methods on the level of fermentation and
like,
the process.
Like, okay, just like how long it's like fermenting for.
Processing methods. Not every tea
There's the
leaves
difference between
works.
green tea. It's not like 2 different like actual types of tea. Okay, cool. Like 2 different plants. Is it like of like indica and sativa? You know what other plant started in China is, hold on, where did cannabis originate? Because I swear to God it's from, why am I looking at it like a Google search? Cannabis originate. I swear to God it's China, right? Central or South Asia? Yes. With its use dating at least back to the 3rd century. Is there Chinese cannabis tea? Is that a thing that has been like Chinese green tea, Chinese weed tea? Ain't no way. Herbal medicine?
So
okay, wait. No way. Chat. That's real. Oh, that's so awesome. I don't condone the use of illicit substances.
With a really, really heavy cold. It's all in my nose.
But because like this culture of Chinese like is like the culture that had the access to these things first and had like the longest time with it, do you think it would necessarily be one to think of something like that? That's the Assassin's Teapot.
I was told by somebody that you can have a crazy psychedelic experience with stems. Basically, what you do is you get the stems and you save them. And every time you get your stem and you save it, you put it in the bottom of a bottle of vodka. And like wait months, over months of brewing and stewing, I eventually had this vodka. I was walking back to the YMCA. I was walking through town. Somebody seen me. And they're like, Drew, bro, I want to buy that thing off you. Like, what? Like, yeah, bro, I want that thing. I want the vodka. And bro, this geezer's like, bro, I'll pay you £100 for it. Well, yeah, fair, okay. So I sold it to him for 100 quid. He didn't even have it that night. Apparently, like 3 days later, he drank it with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend had such a bad experience that she left him. £100 to get rid of the missus.
Interesting. Not what I needed. Chinese weed tea, 4 to 20 minutes. Japanese tea versus Chinese tea.
Okay, so I have come down with. Okay, so I have come down with a.
Let's just look at China. China. Oh, wait, what is this? Oh, POV or an ancient Chinese culture. China. Food. I want to immerse myself in all of Chinese culture and Chinese tradition and what is new with the world and the culture of the hegemon. Come on.
What does fast food in China look like? I'm at Weilianpi, a chain that's
This is where I'm gonna live,
where
goddammit.
the food is prepared off-site and assembled on location. But in addition to burgers and fries, they offer things like Japanese curry and Chinese cold noodles. Their burgers has an amazing cheese-filling beef patty, and the Japanese curry is super flavorful and delicious, and everything I got here costs 55 yuan. What does fast food in China look like? I'm at Weilianpi, a chain that...
For all that? Wait. Similar to McDonald's.
Where the food is prepared off-site and assembled on location. But in addition to burgers and fries, they offer things like Japanese curry and Chinese cold noodles. Their burgers has an amazing cheese-filling beef patty, and the Japanese curry is super flavorful and delicious, and everything I got here costs 55 yuan. What does fast food in China look like?
For $7.
A chain that's similar to McDonald's, where the...
And that's your fast food. What the hell? China's on some different stuff.
What does fast food in China look like? I'm at Weilianpi.
Chinese food looks so good. Okay. Chinese food looks so good. What do Chinese truck drivers eat?
Truck drivers in China eat for lunch? I'm at this tiny rest stop in the middle of nowhere, but that doesn't stop the noodle shop inside from making each bowl fresh to order. A bunch of truck drivers stopped here for a cheap and fulfilling meal before continuing on their 800-mile journey for the day. I got this bowl of beef noodle soup for just 15 yuan, and it was so good. What do truck drivers in China eat for lunch? I'm at this tiny rest stop in the middle of nowhere, but that doesn't stop the noodle shop inside from making...
I guess you kind of don't really necessarily care for the beef. I just want the soup and the noodles. That looks really nice. Damn, how are they not fat? This looks like a whole lot of fun. She does not look like she's enjoying it. I would be giddy. I'm upset that I'm not.
For 50 cents, I got this hollow moon cake.
Are you
it
serious?
starts with a really soft dough
My
that
broke
the
ass
fills with brown sugar.
My broke ass needs that.
Meat and crushed peanuts. They carefully form it into a bowl before it's pressed into shape. Then they sear it to give it some color before it's baked for 5 minutes. The brown sugar melts into the dough and it becomes brittle and chewy, and it's so good. For 50 cents, I got this hollow moon cake. It starts with a real...
I'm also vegan, so I can't necessarily eat a lot
soft
of things.
dough
Can I
that the
eat that?
vendor fills with brown sugar, sesame, and crushed peanuts. They carefully form it into a bowl before it's pressed into.
Oh, I can't. Oh. This would cost at least $5 in the U.S. per cookie. Per cookie, and you know it. Let's check. It better be crumble. Like, in terms of like quality, I think that would be like the biggest win for China. Is winning over the white girls with like cookie, or like specific branding, like a Stanley branding, like a Labubu branding. You can really like take over culturally, and give people some sense of purpose and meaning in this world, which is what they're looking for. But that isn't necessarily what they're going to find. And again, there are ways you can do that with Chinese characteristics, right? Like there is ways you can do socialism with Chinese characteristics. I think social I think socialism with Chinese characteristics could benefit from some, like, in keeping of this, if it's not there already. Because as again, the thing that brings people meaning in life is the thing that people give the authority to tell them what to do, because what to do is their meaning, and they want to do that thing. That's as simple as it is. And the thing that brings people meaning in this meaning crisis, the thing that will bring people meaning in this meaning crisis, is the recognition that the only thing in existence is consciousness. Therefore, it is the only thing and the strongest thing to base your meaning off of, and we can do the most good from there, based off of that fact, based off of the fact that the only thing that exists is consciousness, and that we all share in that consciousness. Well, this is the Taoism, which is different than that idea. This one posits more that there is a collective, if not collective, then like transcendery, but like in intimate will that fate. This is fate. This is it. That's, at the end of the day, this is fate, but with the connotation that there is a dualistic nature to it, that is, at the end of the day, a false duality. That's why the symbol is what is there. There's like light in the dark, dark in the light, and they're just light and dark, but they are all one thing. I think if you want to understand Taoist philosophy, you have to look at Xandros and his thing on the null thing. That was one of my favorite videos ever.
I've always found it strange.
Genuinely,
people really want to save money, but are so willing to toss their hard-earned coin in
anything. Why is there not just not?
Basically, this is not a question as to what we should do in life or what is our meaning. It is what is what is life? What is that? How should we understand it, right? Generally speaking, this is how we might understand it, right? Generally speaking, some people might think of it as like branching multiverses and stuff and all that, blah 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 blah, whole bunch of different things. There's a lot of
why to all of that? Because the
new theories. Taoism posits something like this. Something like this. Basically saying, if you're gonna start with nothing, you're gonna start with null, something void, something that lacks. That's what you're gonna start with when you're gonna understand. You're gonna start like saying, like talking about reality. You're gonna say, why is there nothing instead of something? That is your primary assumption. The primary assumption that we have about what reality is that there is nothing first and then something came afterwards. That the universe had a beginning, right? Maybe some scientists are starting to say like, no, the Big Bang, maybe it wasn't the beginning of, maybe it was the beginning of this observable like state of the universe, and as far back as we can look, right? That doesn't mean it was necessarily the beginning, but right, like most people assume that the energy goes back, and then before there was anything, there was nothing. That is what the assumption is.
Causal chain going back to something happening in the multiverse. Now, obviously, for us to scientifically discover that the multiverse is the right answer would need us to find very... Keep going with this, and it feels like you should get to some point where it was DNA, which is frankly horrific to think about. Okay, why were they here? Because the whole species is just upright monkey people swapping DNA back and forth for hundreds of thousands of years. It feels like you should... That pathetically variable type scenario is just the ultimate state of reality. There's nothing deeper than... So that multiverse type scenario is just the ultimate state of reality. Okay, that's a multiverse type example I just pulled out of my ass, but you can see why that seems like a fairly good solution, right? On the road, I've got a few steps to go through to get to my answer to this whole thing. I'm actually worried I'm going to undersell... Hey, how's it going? So, quick question. Why does anything exist?
Most of the way through.
Like, anything. Why is there not just nothing? No, put the blunt down, I'm serious. This is one of those things that I think occurs to basically every human being, and we all either just try not to think about it, or we latch onto some vague explanation and try not to think about the parts of that don't make any sense. So today I'm going to try and do the impossible. I'm going to try and give you an honest-to-God answer. Alright, let's get into it.
Music sounds so goofy.
Okay.
What is that?
So why does anything exist? Because when you think about it, it kind of seems like reality shouldn't exist. I assume you felt that intuition too at some point, right? Like on some level, it seems like everything in reality has a cause, a causal temporal reason for a thing to be the way it is. And what could possibly be the thing that started the entire chain of things existing in the first place? Well, I'd like to offer my preferred solution to this whole thing. I'm actually worried I'm going to undersell how cool...
Some say it's Jesus. I think the another way you can understand it is Plato could say like it's like a logic, like a logos, Platonites or whatever. I don't know.
I think this is, because I'm obviously biased, but I think my solution to this is outrageously satisfying to think about. Now listen, I know this video concept is a little bit bold, I know the whole premise comes across like I'm pretending to be smart enough to have checked God's homework, but listen, I think there are things we can actually genuinely maybe know about existential philosophy stuff, if we think about it really fucking carefully. Okay, I've got a few steps to go through to get to my answer to this question, but stick with me, because I think you're really going to enjoy this. But let's start with my problem with the conventional answers to this question. The usual way of approaching this question of why anything exists in the first...
And that's a big fear I have a lot of the time is underselling the concept that we are a proletariat that exists not on a material level, but a proletariat that exists in a world that is governed by non-material agents, and these non-material agents include you. And you have to understand how they interact on a non-material level, and in order to affect your material circumstances as well, and how they intersect with material reality. These things have to be understood in order to have the clearest picture of the terrain that we are walking under. Otherwise, we risk falling into pitfalls.
Place is to assume that there was a first cause, and if you trace the present moment back in time, you'll eventually find the thing from which everything else.
And in that, you have to be really careful. I think, in that you have to be really careful.
Originated. So let's play that out. All right. So I'll start with myself. Why do I exist?
Because
I was born. Why was I born? Because my parents presumably got
assumptions and a lot of preconceived notions about certain topics, and those topics can lead you astray, and you can be like, you could also be like checking God's homework, as he said, and being like, this so goddamn pretentious in your trying way to understand the world and trying to understand politics and philosophy, because it's a lot of information that you have to parse through, but take it information by information and build your worldview from there.
Bored of looking after my older brother and decided to spend an afternoon swapping DNA, which is frankly horrific to think about. Okay, why were they here? Because the whole species is just upright monkey people swapping DNA back and forth for hundreds of thousands of years. Okay, why were they all here? Because before them it was Homo erectus doing it, before it mentally worked, and the did the Earth have the right conditions, etc, etc. And you keep going with this, and it feels like you should get to some point where it's like super fundamental. Maybe space-time and all the matter and energy in the universe only came to exist because of the way the laws of physics fundamentally work. And the laws of physics work in that way because somehow it's deeply rooted in how logic itself works. And logic works in that particular way because, I don't know, pick your favorite answer. Maybe there's a multiverse or something. To be clear, that's just an example. I'm not actually making an argument for the existence of a
why might logic work that way? Why might there be a way, right? Why is there this world? Why is
but
there
just bear with me. Let's say there's hypothetically an infinite number of universes, and each one has some fundamental logic to it which is infinitely variable between them, and ours is one of them, and it just happens to work the way that it works. So that multiverse type scenario is just the ultimate state of reality. There's nothing deeper than the multiverse. There's nothing further back in time.
And we just happen to be a part of everything. And that could be the case. Oh, wait. That's not what you're saying. You're not saying that everything exists. You're saying that most things exist because most people forget they don't forget. They make a conscious effort. Most people make a conscious effort and intention to neglect and selectively remove the concept of a reality born of idea being real from like the concept of a multiverse when you're talking about it like in real life, and if that is the case, right, and it has to follow certain parameters because that is like the multiverse, but like a multiverse could have could be as big as you want it to be, right? The ways that it will create and do things just depend on the way that you understand not just your reality to work, because remember, it's not just your reality to work, but like how larger than that could work. Any sort of multiverse theory that posits like itself to exist, right? Like not every single one of them, but most of them will posit the fact that fictional universes exist. In that, if those fictional universes exist, there are so many contradictions that it has to mean that everything exists all at once. There are so many contradictions in that. That is the only way that it's resolved, is that everything exists all at once as a single unified tapestry, that is formless, timeless, and unified, And basically it is so overlapped and so everything that nothing necessarily is like visually and is like informative. There's no like information there necessarily, right? Because it's all there, right? And it's all there all at once, and it's beautiful and it's overwhelming. But it's at the end of the day, it's nothing. But it's something because it's awareness. It's you. Yeah, it's aware, and it's awareness. It's you.
The multiverse just is the multiverse. It's infinite and it's timeless and it doesn't have a deeper reason. It just exists. Okay, that's a multiverse type example I just pulled out of my ass, but you can see why that seems like a fairly good solution, right? On the surface at least. It seems to explain everything in our universe. If that was the right answer, everything you could empirically observe about the reality you experience would ultimately terminate at the multiverse. There'd be some causal chain going back to something happening in the multiverse. Now, obviously, for us to scientifically discover that the multiverse is the right answer would need us to find very compelling evidence that the multiverse does truly exist, which we currently don't have in reality. But let's say, for the sake of argument, next year we find irrefutable proof that this multiverse thing actually exists. I don't know, maybe we point a telescope at a patch of the sky and we see some physical edge to the universe where our universe connects to some other universe. I know that's conceptually kind of stupid, but just for the sake of argument, just suspend your disbelief for a second. So we find hard evidence of different universes existing. And let's say also something about the data that we managed to collect by looking at it also fills in the gaps in our current understanding of physics. So we'd know that the multiverse isn't just a hypothesis, but it's actually true. It would be totally irrefutable because we'd have the same strength of conviction about it as we have for the idea that 1 + 1 = 2, which is to say it will just not be disproven because we're absolutely sure about it. Okay, I know that's a lot of suspension of disbelief, but that's the complete scenario. So we have everything we need. In this example, we literally know where the universe comes from and everything about how it works with a 100% level of certainty. So here's the critical part. Would we, in this scenario, have an answer to the question of why anything exists in the first place? I would argue no. You could say that we know what every single part of physical reality is caused by, that all things we observe can be traced back to something in the multiverse that we can't interact with, in some extra universal, primordial multiverse hyperspace, or whatever techno box apply. But I would argue that even in this case, you still don't know why the multiverse exists, right? Like,
consciousness, I think, does fill that also void as well, that it's missing there. That what he's saying is like, if everything like eventually just goes back to like a multiverse, that still doesn't explain why the multiverse chose to exist, right? You can say it goes back to, if it goes back to consciousness, then in order for there to be nothing, in order for there to be everything, generally, there has to be a there has to be an aware subject behind it, and nothing is a similar kind of instance. Nothing and everything are both similar instances, and that awareness of everything will result in all realities existing, because remember, it's it's everything, right? But at the end of the day, that's what he's trying to say. That's what Taoism is also trying to say. Is like with null.
Knowing that it exists and everything in the physical world traces back to it doesn't tell us why the multiverse itself exists. Let's take another example. Let's imagine that instead of discovering as a multiverse, we discover that God is real. Let's just pick a literal interpretation of a religious God for the sake of example. Maybe reality has a sense of humor and the one true religion turns out to be Mormonism or some shit. So imagine God straight up jump scares humanity one day, just full hog, comes out the closet, confirms himself to be real by telepathically speaking to everyone on Earth simultaneously, like when Goku was fighting Majin Buu. If you were being pedantic, you could say, well, maybe an AI-run lab released some neurotoxin and caused us all to have those hallucinating seeing the edge of the universe in the previous example. So let's just say, once again, for the sake of argument, we know for a fact that this interpretation of God is real for certain. So in other words,
it is a feeling that, like, why does something exist and nothing exist? Because my question, the answer that I just had doesn't actually like follow as to what I was trying to say there, as to that Christianity and Islam and all these like others have like they point to these real this real idea, this consciousness, that is real, that is like the realest thing that we can know, right? And and that like metaphorically, and you can see it everywhere, right? But that also fits this concept of being that first moved, unmoved, that ground of being at the beginning of time, right? The nothing, right? Consciousness is that nothing, because if nothing exists, right? Nothing cannot be in relation with anything else. If nothing is in relation with something, it is like something. It has a property. If nothing is not in relation with anything, it has no properties. But nothing cannot be in relationship with nothing, because we are speaking about nothing. There is a concept of nothing that we have, and nothing has to have the ability to reference that, or else we are not speaking about we're pointing towards a ghost. But we, even if we're using an illusion to describe the ghost is still being pointed at. The ghost is still in the room, right? This ghost, perhaps, while not being real, the ability to describe it tells you that it has that somehow self-reference and the ability to reference it, as in making sure it stays nothing. Like if you were to die and you died, right, and there's nothing left afterwards, right? If you were to stay nothing, nothing would have to have the concept of itself being nothing and know what nothing is, as apart from not nothing. Nothing has to know itself as apart from not nothing in order to stay nothing. And so it's nothing is self-referential. Nothing has to be aware of itself. And if nothing is aware of itself, nothing is conscious. And even in that, nothing doesn't usually ever experience nothing. Because it paradoxically is conscious. What you find at the bottom of these paradoxes is consciousness.
We've taken that definite multiverse answer for what the first thing was and replaced it with a definite God answer. Okay, so the fundamental cause of all things is God. Does this answer the question of why does anything exist? Again, I would say no, because just like we have no explanation for why the multiverse would exist in the first place, we also have no explanation for why God exists either. God is apparently another thing that just exists without explanation. Okay, what about a definite Big Bang answer? Like space, time, matter, energy, existence itself. It all started at the moment of the Big Bang with nothing prior. Like time only goes back that far. But you get the same problem. Why the Big Bang? And if the answer is a Big Bang, why isn't it a multiverse? Why isn't it a God? Why isn't it some other thing? And this problem goes even deeper. Imagine if the universe had no beginning, like our 3D universe exists in time eternally. Maybe the expansion of the universe that we're observing is just part of a cycle where it expands and universe exists eternally. Here doesn't tell you looking for existence of, right?
That he gives into as to
the
why.
Universe itself. The universe needs to be even be an event in time, because time needs to be in it. So I'd say the actual answer has to be something more like the logic that the universe itself runs on.
Yeah, it's a sacred geometry. It's like a sacred,
which is external to the universe itself. The universe needs to be totally embedded in it rather than the other way around. So what is it that all of these solutions we've already mentioned fundamentally have in common? Like, what's the thing that makes them all kind of a shit solution to this problem? Here's what I think it is. All the solutions that people bring up have properties of their own. I think that's the issue with them. Or is properties the right word? Properties, qualities, aspects, whatever word you want to use. What I'm trying to say is that if something exists, I think that basically means that some facet of reality is one specific way, as opposed to the infinitely many.
The ground of being cannot have qualities.
number of other ways it could hypothetically have been. If something's blue, that means it isn't red or orange or yellow or green or purple or black or white or whatever. If something's big, it's not small. If something's small, it's not big. If a particle exists at point XYZ at time t with velocity v and rotation r, that's equivalent to saying that it's not doing everything other than that, right? It's specific. It's like all of infinity wants to exist simultaneously, but real objects are inhibited from being anything other than the one thing they specifically are. Wow, jeez.
Yeah. It's like you have two concepts. You have a white and you have a black, right? And he has that here somewhere. Right? It's like this frame. You have a he gives it literally right there. You have a white and you have a black, right? And they contradict each other, right? When they overlap. You have like a nothing, right? And then you have an everything. Nothing and everything try to happen both at the exact same time. And so they contradict until they come to a truth. That is what Schrodinger's cat is about. And they come to a truth based off of what you are aware of at the time, which can be based off of other factors as that can include the shape of the universe. And the shape of the universe can be determined based off of that you are aware of it. And that you are aware of it isn't that like the self is aware of it, is that the is aware of it. You know what I mean?
Maybe do pass the blunt. What I'm trying to say is, to exist is to be specific. Existence is specificity. Things that exist are an exact way. Real things have exact properties. They are precisely the way that they are, and no other ways, at least philosophically speaking. So by being specific, a thing becomes real, but by being real, it needs a cause, because to have those specific properties is to require justification as to why you have those properties, as opposed to the infinite number of other properties you could theoretically have had. Which is why none of those answers provided by science or religion or anything else actually fucking work. The Big Bang, the eternal universe, the creator God, the multiverse, they all have different properties from each other, and we fight with each other over it as if we're going to figure out what the right properties are. But I think the puzzle of what the first cause is, and therefore why anything exists in the first place, isn't a search for something with the right properties, it's a search for something that doesn't have any properties. That's the only thing that can be an answer to this question. The thing that caused reality needs to be propertyless, because that's the only way it can exist without prior justification. And what is something without properties? Kind of has to be nothing, right? The first thing has to be nothing. So now all we need to know is how to get something out of nothing. You know, now that I'm saying that out loud, that might actually be a harder problem. Just kidding. This is actually basically the start of my preferred solution, so stick around. Sorry to interrupt, this is just a quick message to say, statistically speaking, you're probably not subscribed, so I'll make you a deal. Press the subscribe button and I won't come over to your house and do this. Alright, thanks. Back to the video. Okay, so we just need to figure out how to create all of reality out of nothing. It's only the hardest question physically imaginable, so it's super easy, barely an inconvenience. First off, I want to be clear about the term nothing, because the way it's normally used is a lot more vague than the way I'm trying to use it right now. In fact, when I've been writing down my thoughts on this...
Yeah, and he calls it null. He says that it's like the concept of something that like lacks an entire like relationship, lacks relationship with anything else, something that is like not nothing, but like the least thing that could miss out on being a thing, the thing we can't talk about.
Because null is true nothingness. So you can't put it in a box, partially because the box won't actually be empty, really. It'll have air in it, it'll have outgassed molecules from the box itself and neutrinos passing through it, some low coordinates from the you have null, which doesn't require a cause. In other words, it can and will exist without prior justification. So it existed before the universe existed, although the word before is doing a lot of heavy lifting here as well, because time only exists in the context of...
There are three things that can... Here. There are three things that can exist without prior justification, and three things alone. Nothing, everything, consciousness.
The space-time of our universe, so it's not really clear what before means in this context.
Nothing, everything, and consciousness. Those are the only things that can exist before anything else that can exist a priori.
Anyway, my point is that even if nothing exists, null exists, because null is nothing, right? It necessarily exists. As for how you get something from null, that's not necessarily obvious, but I think I found a potential solution, although it helps to think about this in a particular kind of a way. You know how you can represent a 3D cube as a drawing on a 2D piece of paper? Or you can represent a 4D hypercube as a 3D model, or indeed on a 2D screen like you're currently looking at it.
Oh, I love trying to imagine the fourth dimension.
But when you take stuff and flatten it into a lower
things.
dimension than it's meant to be in, all the angles and lengths end up wrong because you're missing one of the axes needed to describe all the properties it has with 100% accuracy. And I think the explanation that I'm about to give is necessarily kind of like that, because your mind is this finite thing that needs to picture things happening to understand those things, and null needs you to not do that if you want an accurate picture. So the explanation I'm going to try and give is sort of like the shadow of the real. You to not do that is this finite thing that needs to picture things happening to understand those things, and null needs you to
rational
not do that if you want an accurate picture. So the explanation I'm going to try and give is sort of like the shadow of the real mechanism that actually happens. As in, you can understand what I'm saying, but it's a little hard to visualize. That said, I still think it's a very satisfying answer. So anyway, here's how it goes. Remember earlier when I said that to exist is to be precise? Things that exist have certain specific properties. Well, really, what I'd say is that for things to exist, they actually need two things. They need a space of potential values for the properties that they have, and then they need the actual specific value that they have within that space, right? So for example, the universe has three-dimensional space. That's the space of potential values, and then a particle has a specific value for X, Y, and Z. And I know people are going to bring up quantum physics and how particles aren't defined with total precision or whatever. I don't actually think that's an issue, but the reasons why are kind of outside the scope of this video, so for now just suspend disbelief with me if that's a thing you have an issue with. So anyway, things that exist have specific values within a field of potential values, and null is maximally undefined because it has no properties, zero value in all possible fields. That's what it means to be truly non-existent. You can actually imagine that there's an infinite number of different potential property fields, and our reality only has a certain finite specific number of property fields in which phenomena can happen. Like, if you were to imagine another hypothetical universe that's radically different to ours, so that it doesn't have space or time or matter or energy, but it has some other stuff that we can't even imagine, that other stuff would be different property fields, as far as I'm concerned. Ones that we can't even imagine because our minds are embedded in the fields that we have. And what I'm saying is that null is non-existence, because for objects to exist is...
Yeah, he's jumping around it. He's definitely, like, remember, there's an audience for this kind of content, right? And philosophy, sci-fi universe, all that, right? But they all jump around the consciousness aspects here.
Or time or matter or energy, but it has some other stuff that we can't even imagine. That other stuff would be different property fields, as far as I'm concerned. Ones that we can't even imagine because our minds are embedded in the fields that we have. And what I'm saying is that null is non-existence, because for objects to exist is for them to have defined values within defined property fields, and null is undefined in every potential field. It's like a space with an infinite number of dimensions and no content in any of them. No specificity, no differentiation, no existence. Okay, from here, there are two steps that we need to take, and they're a little bit hard to conceptualize, but remember, this is the shadow of the true explanation that we're exploring with our stupid monkey brains, so give your imagination some slack. Okay, so null is non-existence because it's undefined in infinitely many spaces of potential, and we've characterized that as having no value in all of those spaces. Okay, so my question is there anything else which fits the definition of null? Something which is also maximally undefined, but it isn't the null that we've already described? And I would say, yes, there is something. There's at least one thing that's equivalent, and that thing is the opposite of our current conceptualization of null. Think about it. If a property field can express specific content to produce something that's real, something that exists, and the lack of specificity is non-existence, then not expressing any value in any field is one characterization of null, but also expressing every value simultaneously in all possible fields is also null. That's still maximally undefined, totally non-specific, totally undifferentiated, however you want to say it.
I had a poem I wrote a while ago that talks about this exact thing, and it's one of my gems. It's one of my babies. I love writing, and here, let me pull this up. Open a new window. It's a lot. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. I'm just gonna read this little blurb at the beginning. We became the same. Now there is, it seems like there always was, but we forget a time when there was none. In fact, no when, no where, no here, no there. No is, simply wasn't. Not for an ever. Ever hasn't even happened yet. Only nothing changed, only nothing hadn't, only nothing wasn't, only nothing isn't. Where we have a lot, this void had, not a void, this void has room to fill. A void has room to fill. Then came all that was never became all that will ever, all at once. All was acknowledged by one, and then the rest of it is about the way that the two have interacted, and then how that happens, and then our conversation about it, like what does that mean? But who am I? Who am I? Who am I but that who thinks? Who am I that thinks but the thinker? And who is the thinker but that which is defined by its thinks, right? There is the awareness is nothing. Awareness doesn't exist. Consciousness doesn't exist outside of consciousness. And there is nothing outside of it. It's confusing. It's just like like this stuff will genuinely make you go insane if you're not mentally prepared for it. That which is defined by its thinks. I, as a conscious agent, am a thinker, am a one who produces thoughts, and I'm defined by my thoughts, and within the scope of other people's consciousnesses around me, which are the one consciousness, which is the field, that one point which doesn't exist, which is nothing, which is everything, which is everywhere, right? Is defined by that which surrounds it, which is the exact same thing. A thought. A thought that only thinks of what it sees, a thought that all it thinks of me. A thought that thinks of we. One thought that thinks of we. It was up there somewhere, whatever. But who am I and who is not? This is a bad thought. There's none who is not. They gaze at the mirror. And I might perform that someday. Gnosis. We are at a point in the broadcast in which I would like to get at some stuff. Chinese street food.
The thing that made null null is true in both of these instances. Both total emptiness and total fullness, in their most extreme of possible extremes, are both null. It's almost kind of like how a TV screen with all black pixels is displaying something with no complexity and therefore holds essentially no data, but the same is true for a screen with all white pixels. Basically that, except instead of pixels on a screen, its value is available to an infinite number of infinitely variable fields of potential properties. So the ultimate emptiness of the infinite space of all properties and the absolute infinity of the infinite space of all potential properties are the same thing. Not similar, not comparable, literally the same exact thing. Remember, existence is specificity of properties, and these things are both maximally non-specific. These are two different ways for our primitive monkey brains to comprehend the concept of nothingness, but both of them are nothingness, both of them are null. Now, there's just one more step to take. So we've discovered two discrete characterizations of null. Like, null is one object with multiple facets to it. Now, this is actually a question. What's more likely? Do these two interpretations of null exist as two distinct forms, or do they exist in a way which is a continuous object? Like, is null more like two different objects, where one object is nothingness and the other object is everythingness, both of which lack specificity and therefore don't have the power to make anything exist? Or is null one object, and these two expressions of it are part of a continuum, like different points on a circle or a sphere, where these two characterizations are diametrically opposite from each other? Like, sure, we've only reasoned ourselves to the point of seeing these two examples so far, but I find the idea that non-existence instantly generates two
This is an idea I would like to pin. Philosophy is the science of thinking about things you don't know how to think about yet. Yeah, I like that shit. That's real fun. That's interesting. I'm putting that in my notes. Sorry.
Continuous forms of itself a little bit baffling. If null simply is what it is, and it's the only thing that exists, I feel like the idea of it existing in two discrete ways is almost adding something that shouldn't be there. It's like adding complexity to the whole setup. Separation between two simultaneously true things as though they're two individual objects floating.
Like and I feel like that's like, there's a simplicity that exists in their unity that is like that's the one thing that can like snap right onto itself without contradiction, but only after you encounter certain wisdom and then certain layers later you might find that at the end of the road, there you were, sitting at the end of time, on a tree stump, sipping tea, singing, probably in Chinese.
Something larger feels to me like it needs justification in and of itself. Like, doesn't discontinuity imply a gap between these two things? How can there be a gap when these two things are the only things in existence? Doesn't a gap need space to exist between them?
There is no discontinuity.
Doesn't space as a concept only exist within these objects, not around them? Yeah, to me it doesn't seem right. Whereas if there's simply one object, and that object can be characterized as nothingness and everythingness, and therefore needs a continuum, like a range of things in between, that arguably solves the how does anything come from nothing problem, because arguably every conceivable reality falls somewhere on the continuum between those two things, and therefore also solves the why does anything exist in the first place question. It's like really actually nothing exists, but the act of nothing existing instantaneously generates a kind of everything. It's like reality itself instantaneously becomes necessary because of this whole process. This is wild to think about. Let me recap the whole thing. So, one, there needs to be some reason why reality exists, because reality does indeed exist, and there doesn't seem to be an internally consistent way for it to exist without a cause. Two, the first thing that caused everything else can't have a cause of its own, because then it wouldn't be the first cause, so it needs to justify its own existence. Three, the only way to have something which justifies its own existence is for it to not have any properties of its own. Four, nothingness, or null as I prefer to call it, is defined as that which has no properties. Five, null can be expressed in two diametrically opposing ways. And six, the existence of these two characterizations of null requires a continuum of other characterizations which necessarily have some properties when isolated individually. Each one of these characterizations
is a really well put together thought about null and all that, but null at the end of the day has already been expressed in ancient wisdom, in the ancient scrolls. It's expressed in goddamn Kung Fu Panda. Hold on. It's literally shown right there. The freaking the scroll, the Kung Fu Panda scroll. You know why it's empty? And why it's reflective? Because it's showing that it's you. It's reflexive. It's the Tao Te Ching. It's the point at the everything. It's the flow of the world. It's the yin and yang. It's all of that. You're right. As above, so below. All of these sort of concepts. The non-existent, self-existent. There's nothing at the end, and at the end of it, it's blank, and it is actually blank. Also, what happens in this case is you're not only able to then say that people are now allowed to explore religion because truth has been splintered, truth has died, and so we can go and explore. Now we can resurrect truth and say all truth exists, and that includes material truth as existing to continue together alongside these other truths, and saying that yes, it is just a piece of paper, yes, the curtains are just blue, but that doesn't mean that like these material like worlds like overrides the other ones. This material understanding of the world is useful. Yes, it is good to understand that at the end of the day, like I'm a physical human body with cells and whatnot, and to recognize that, and that I'm mortal, and that when I die there's gonna be nothing, right? It's good to understand that is a real perspective that some people have, that you can integrate into a web of metaphysics as well, in which the larger reality is the Tao, is the Dragon Scroll. Kung Fu Panda is the Taoist masterpiece, and no one ever gives Kung Fu Panda its credit for being a Taoist masterpiece, genuinely. Oh my god, I really cannot spell. Philosophy of Kung Fu Panda trilogy. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, yeah. I guess this is what we're doing today. Let's read the abstract and the introduction. We will see if we can read the rest, because we have the actual words of fucking Lao Tzu to read instead of third year bachelor philosophies work on Taoism and the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. The philosophy of Asian family is deeply rooted in the Denotic relationship between the father and son. The duty of a father is to teach a son, or the moral higher values, and pass down of the family enterprise. Haley Manor in her essay Religion to the World, presents these relations by taking the reference a movie, the Kung Fu Panda part 1, 2, and 3. She showed a tension between Taoism and the non-interference, and Confucianism, or traditional Eastern or non-interference. Oh yes, how have I gone this long talking about Taoism and not Wu Wei? How have I never spoken about Wu Wei? We have to get a quick introduction of that concept first. Effortless action. This is that you can make things more real with intentions being set, and those intentions can become so strong because they are reflected by your unconscious actions, but as well as by your like agency. You can build your agency to the point in which things can begin to seem like they worked because you like faked it till you made it, right? Not the exact same concepts, but like that.
Management used to take longer than actual projects.
Effortless
then
action.
I stopped doing it myself.
Or,
3 weeks ago,
action with action through inaction.
Wu Wei means in Chinese non-doing or doing nothing. It sounds like a pleasant invitation to relax or worse, fall into laziness or apathy. Yet this concept is key to the noblest kind of action according to the philosophy of Taoism and is at the heart of what it means to follow Tao or the Way. According to the central text of Taoism, the Tao Te Ching, the Way never acts, yet nothing is left undone. This is the paradox of Wu Wei. It doesn't mean not acting, it means effortless action or actionless action. It means being at peace while engaged in the most frenetic tasks.
Recognizing that everything is already done. If you need a way to understand how some people can understand everything to be like already done, if you need a perspective to describe that from, I can take this comment that I wrote and try and use that to paint a little picture for you. You exist as one long 4-dimensional tube, as it were, right? In this video about how the 4th dimension affects you every single day.
My partner and I had challenges starting a family before we came to Kaiser Permanente, but now we have a beautiful son. It was a complex pregnancy, but our care team was with us every step of the way.
In terms of if the 4th dimension is time,
Kaiser Permanente.
Flip your mode of thinking, suspend your disbelief, say that you can think of time spatially, right? Then remember, every single moment exists now along that continuum of spatial time or whatever, 4-dimensional spatial universe or whatever. You, as you were, as you will be, always exist physically as a 4-dimensional tube at every single point in your life. They are all happening now. There's a space above from this 4th dimensional perspective outside of this world, right, where you can say, wow, that is all happening now. Like one of those like showcases that like those mafiosos do of like your gang buddy frozen in ice and chopped up in like into bisections, like cross sections. You're still physically connected to your mother at birth, touching every single person you've ever hugged, punching everyone you've ever fought, and physically attached to the ground as you die. You're protruding from your mother at the moment of your birth. Your mother, the same as her mother, and the same as her mother. In fact, did you know that you existed since your mother's birthday? Or since a little bit, I guess, before that, because you, as a cell, as an egg cell, have always existed for the entirety of your egg cell provider's life. If all eggs are given to a mother at like some point in the womb development or at birth, you've existed since your mother's been born. Like you've been existed as a part of her for the whole of her life. Your family is a physical structure, actually rooted in like all of like some togetherness. Humanity is a physical familial structure. Humanity collectively, as like a species. Life on Earth then joins that family structure from the very newest of newborns, on the newest of species, to the very oldest of like cellular structures, that's all together. And all of those things got their structures from non physical like stuff, right? Like non-physical, non-living material got their material from living material, got their material from non-living material, and they return it to non-living material, and it will your body will return to the dirt, and you are physically attached to the dirt at that point in time, whenever that happens to be, whether that's set in stone or not, right? The earth and all of the life on it is one solid physical structure throughout all of the earth's existence in time, if you consider time to be a physical structure, and that traces back to the very beginning of time. The entire universe falls into that thing. If that's how, if you're struggling to have a concept of the universe as from a perspective to say, yeah, no, you don't have to do anything, it's all already done. That's, some say that then you lose agency, right? But you also have to remember that people have also abstracted that a bit further past that fourth dimension of time into a second dimension of time, as in like going sideways in time, which goes into more dimension theory, which is not China. We're Chinaing today.
Wu Wei means in Chinese non-doing or doing nothing. It sounds like a pleasant invitation to relax, or worse, fall into laziness or apathy. Yet this concept is key to the noblest kind of action according to the philosophy of Taoism, and is at the heart of what it means to follow Tao, or the way. According to the central text of Taoism, the Tao Te Ching, the way never acts, yet nothing is left undone. This is the paradox of Wu Wei. It doesn't mean not acting, it means effortless action, or actionless action. It means being at peace.
I want to learn Chinese.
In the most frenetic tasks, so that one can carry these out with maximum skill and efficiency. Something of the meaning of Wu Wei is captured when we talk of being in the zone, at one with what we're doing, in a state of profound concentration and flow. Wu Wei is closely connected to the Taoist reverence for the natural world.
There's flow state, there's Wu Wei, and the animals do Wu Wei, like they live in Wu Wei, like that is how they live, like but human beings, on the other hand, do not, right? And human beings choose to not, and we choose to not due to our affinity for this concept called the self, the concept called rationality. If we let go of these self-given authority, right, because it's based on nothing, and we fall into the self-given authority of consciousness because it's based off of the apparent self-given authority of consciousness, because if you weren't conscious, everything would die, right? Consciousness owns the means of reality. If you want to put it in a certain way, and that is irrefutable, and that's what gives consciousness that sort of like position there. I forget what I was talking about.
For it means striving to make our behavior as spontaneous and inevitable as certain natural processes, and to ensure that we are swimming with rather than against currents. We are to be like the bamboo that bends in the wind, or the plant that adjusts itself to the shape of a tree. Wu Wei involves letting go of ideals that we may otherwise try to force too violently onto things. It invites us instead to respond to the true demands of situations.
And we also have to remember that Wu Wei, and following it in the instinctual mind of in the instinctual way that which an animal would follow a wu, their effortless action, their instinct, their natural inclinations, right? Which is the conversations of like the consciousness around them, like because they have a lower sense of self, their barriers are open. We have to remember that that's not necessarily the ideal that humans need to strive for. I'd argue that the ideal that humans should strive for is a unity of this rational construct of mind called the self, and its stabilization in the ego, in addition to Wu Wei. And that will not only resolve meaning, it resolves the forgotten art of empathy,
which tend only to be noticed when we put our own ego-driven plans to one side. What can follow is a loss of self-consciousness, a new unity between the self and its environment. But none of this means we won't be able to change or affect things if we strive for Wu Wei. The Tao Te Ching points out that we should be like water, which is submissive and weak, and yet which can't be surpassed for attacking what is hard and strong. Through gentle persistence and a compliance with a specific shape of a problem, an obstacle can be worked around and gradually eroded. The idea of achieving the greatest effects by a wise, strategic passivity has been central to Chinese notions of politics, diplomacy, and business. In the
Chinese art is genuinely so beautiful. This is some of the most like this is so cheeky. Look at this guy. He's pointing to his chin. He's so the cash on the thing. This is fun. This is cool. I'm interested in this. I'm engaged with this like Chinese art style, and discussing Chinese philosophy is my wheelhouse, is my skill set. But additionally to that, I think I would love to look at some folklore.
Manuals on wisdom produced by Taoists, we are repeatedly told that rather than impose
just to exploit the culture respectfully,
we should let others act frantically and then lightly adjust ourselves as we see the direction that matters have evolved in. In China's Tang dynasty, many poets likened Wu Wei to the best aspects of being drunk. It wasn't alcoholism they were promoting, but the decline in rigidity and anxiety that sometimes comes with being a little drunk, and which can help us to accomplish certain tasks. One poet compared someone inspired by Wu Wei to a drunk man who falls uninjured from a moving cart. Such is their spiritual momentum that they are.
It's like people with ADHD have this like thing. I guess like medical doctors will tell you if I were like sitting and I were trying to like get up and go somewhere, I could like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like a head thing. It's like a it's like a, I don't know. Like I was about to bump into that right there. You know what I mean? Like you bump into it. Ah! Can't explain stuff. But that's because of like a thing that like you do with your brain where like you can't see a certain thing, and so you don't move your head like consciously, but like there's a certain unconscious action to move to it to like adjust because like you've gotten snagged on so much. That's like a reflex.
Are unaffected by accidents and misfortunes that might break those of a more controlled and controlling mindset. Theories of painting from the Tang period onwards made Wu Wei central to artistic practice. Rather than laboriously attempting to reproduce nature as faithful copyists, the artist should find nature within themselves and surrender to its calls. The painter's task is not to imitate the external surface of things, but to present the qui, or spirit of things like mountains, trees, birds, and rivers, by feeling some of this spirit in themselves, and then letting it flow out through the brush onto silk or paper. It followed.
Yes, because look, if you don't think you are the environment, look. Fascinating. Okay. So it seems that there is a mechanism in which a certain element of the environment is taken in. Wait, there are multiple eating, multiple mechanisms in which the environment is taken in by the body, which is made up of some of those particles that are in the environment. And then they chew it, and then they eat it, and then they, oh my god, it's rumbling in their stomach, and it becomes a part of them. How does it happen? And then they dump it all the way back out, or sometimes they breathe it out, right? It's in and out, right? It's like a cycling of like bits of, get it, information, bits of genes, bits of cells, of food, of molecules of air, that all get together and feed into this system of you as well as your environment, and you think you're not a part of that environment, even though you're made up of the same exact things, and you're flowing in that system with those same exact things. So you gotta understand what the way of that thing is, and just like understand that thing isn't going to move. That thing isn't going to move the way you want it to move. I'm sorry. The universe isn't gonna flow in your direction just because you want it to flow in that direction. The reason I say that is because contradiction, as we saw with the null, right? The unity of contradiction, right? The unification of contradiction, right? Is that they don't exist, right? But they also, when the opposite and something happened at the same time, it doesn't make sense, right? That's why there's a contradiction there. You're in one of the invalid spots for this section of reality. You picked a spot to understand that concept that's slightly off the mark. That doesn't mean it's untrue, that doesn't mean it's unreal. That just means it's not within the perspective of our collective human conscious, which is a section of all of reality, which is a section of all of the way. And that one has its own will compared to the way as well, and blah, 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 blah.
That Taoist thinkers revered not just the finished work of art, but the act of painting itself, and considered artists' studios as places for applied philosophy. The Tang Dynasty poet Fu Zai described a big party that had been thrown to witness the painter Zhang Zhou in action. Right in the middle of the room, he sat down with his legs spread out, took a deep breath, and his inspiration began to issue forth. Those present were as startled as if lightning was shooting across the heavens or a whirlwind was sweeping up into the sky. The ink seemed to be spitting from his flying brush. He clapped his hands with a cracking sound. Suddenly, strange shapes were born. When he'd finished, there stood pine trees, scaly and riven, crags, steep and precipitous, clear water and turbulent clouds. He threw down his brush, got up and looked around in every direction. It seemed as if the sky had cleared after a storm to reveal the true essence of 10,000 things. Fu Zai added of Zhang, whose works are sadly now lost, that he had left mere skill behind, and that his art was not painting, but the very Tao itself. A good life could not be attained by Wu Wei alone.
Mystical painting. He brought in... He somehow captured the essence of Huh.
But this Taoist concept captures a wisdom we may at times be in desperate need of when we're in danger of damaging ourselves through an overly stern and unyielding adherence to ideas which simply don't fit the demands of the world.
That's beautiful. That is the Wu Wei. And I was getting into Wu Wei because we were talking about Kung Fu Panda. She showed the tension between Taoism, or non-interference, and Confucianism, or traditional way of Eastern parenting. These philosophies contradict each other by building individual characters, by causing moral dilemma in the protagonist Pa. I'm probably gonna need more tea, but I think it's over. Do 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 do.
There's magic in the arrows.
Putting on some game music.
Tonight we complete that challenge for one last time.
The perfect crunch with no artificial flavors, colors.
You know what I need?
Tostitos.
I think for times in which I can just like I'm not like doing anything and I'm like waiting for something to happen or something like that. And I don't feel like I'm able to and capable enough to hold the stream. I think what I'm going to do in that case is fucking pull up the Communist Manifesto and have it just like be reading out. Effortless action. The universe is in you, seeing chi. I've been trying to practice learning chi a little bit. I haven't done the greatest at it. Alex O'Connor, the biggest unsolved problem of philosophy in 100 years.
The Chevy Silver.
That's interesting, but I don't know how Chinese that is, so I don't care. That is the funniest thing. History of cannabis. Oh my god, that's gonna exist in a free form. Actually, I forget what I was using that for. No! Oh. Who is this? One concurrent viewer. And that's me? Oh my god, that's... I don't know how I... handle the embarrassment. Anywho. Introduction. Robin, the stories are... I don't know if I... Because I don't have an ability to